Hi, my name is Scott Little. I have a company that I run called Little Known Software. I actually don't have anything to do with mobile software, so take most of what I say here with a grain of salt. But what I do is I write plugins for the mail application on OS 10. Excuse me. And I've been working in Objective-C for about 12 years. Most of that time, obviously, in OS 10. A little bit of that has been doing some iOS development, but mostly OS 10. Before that, I worked in the corporate J2EE environment. So yay fun. And for the last 5 years, I've been an independent developer, and I live in Warsaw. So yay us, right? And what? And today I'm going to talk about why you should go for a sub. Now, obviously, I don't mean go to a Subway and get a sandwich. You should never eat there. You should get a burger or a kebab, depending on whether you're Antek or Pavel. But it's about the idea of whether or not you should take your product to a subscription model rather than selling it as a one-time product that you sell to people. Excuse me. But a lot of the current discussion that you hear around both in the iOS and just probably as well in the Android world, I don't know that much about it since I don't interact too much with it, but certainly even in the OS 10 world as well, is a lot of current discussions about pricing of your app and how much you should price it. What is the best strategy for a price to make it so that you can make a living off of your product? And of course, there's no real one answer to this question, but I thought I would present to you what I do, what's working well for me in my products, and see maybe, hopefully, that might work out for you guys, or might give you some ideas that would help you out. So the major question everybody asks is, what should the price be? Should it be 99 cents? Should I go for volume? 199 doesn't, kind of in the middle there. That doesn't really do much of anything at all. I think a minimum price for a really sustainable product that you sell a single, you sell once is $4.99. And of course, you can always go for this ridiculous pricing model of 1,000 euros or whatever, but nobody's going to buy that, right? But in addition to that, there's the question of whether I should do a single price up front or whether I should give away the app and do the freemium model, give it away and have an in-app purchase for one of these prices afterwards. But you still have the same discussion as to what is the price, what should the price be of my app, and can I make a sustainable living off of that price? Of course, it's a one-time price. You only get it once, unless of course you have a bunch of consumables in your product. But that's a completely different talk. I don't really want to discuss that like some games do. But it's a totally different model. I'm not going to talk about. But this is the one I call the single price point, and it has a lot of conveniences because it's a very simple interaction between the customer, and you, and that is they find an app, they pay a price, they like the app because it either does what they think it's going to do what they want, or they tried it out and it does do what they want. They pay you a price and you're happy, and so forth. So that's a very simple interaction, but what does it mean for you as a business person and being able to sustain your business or your family or you or whatever with a pricing model like that? How does that revenue stream work out? Let's take a look at a couple of graphs to get an idea about it. This one is a graph published by Marco Arment. It's based on the sales of Overcast over I think it's about a 6-month period there. And I have two graphs like this, and then a third, well, three graphs that I want to show you, and then I'll talk a little bit more about them. So this is Overcast, the sales of that. This is Unread, which is an RSS feed reader made by Jared Sinclair, and this is just for the iPhone sales, but I think it's pretty, it shows pretty much how sales go for apps. And then he also posted a different graph, which is this one, which is the cumulative revenue of the same thing, iPhone sales for Reader. And if you look at all three of these graphs, you see the two on the right, they show the sales over time over a 6-month period. And what you see there, the shape of the graph is what's important, not really the numbers, because they're different numbers, depending on different things. But the important thing is the shape, and the shape is that if you do your marketing really well, you'll get a big boost at the beginning, and then everything just drops off. Or for you guys, I guess it's like that, right? Everything drops off, and you have this low, steady, hopefully you have a low, steady, at least, number of sales that are going on for a long period of time. Now, it just tapers off and tapers off. And if you look at compare that to the cumulative, you see that the cumulative, that's the total amount of revenue that he's made off of it. And that's reaching a threshold that, it doesn't really go much higher. It went up quickly and then it just kind of plateaus there and it doesn't go up too much higher. Now that to me makes for a very difficult model to sustain yourself if you're an independent business person over a long period of time. Unless you're super great at marketing and you made $5 million or even $500,000 off that first bump, well then you can live for quite a long time. But there again, that's a different business model, because all you care about is getting those first big sales, and the rest of it is just kind of plateauing. It's not too important. So it's difficult for this to be sustainable, unless of course there are certain people or certain ways to make this sustainable. If you're really good at coming up with app ideas and implementing them, then you could publish a whole bunch of apps, and then this long tail out here, builds up. You have a whole stack of the long tails, a small amount of sales. That could work for you. David Smith might be a good example of that, where he has, I don't know, he supposedly has like 500 apps in the iOS store, and if you have 500 apps out there and they're all making a small amount of income, that could work for you. But that's kind of difficult. I personally could never do that because I don't have a lot of app ideas, and you also have to execute on your ideas quickly in order for that to be manageable. So I knew that wasn't going to work for me. So what I decided to try was as the talk is about, is subscription. And why is a subscription interesting? And there's two reasons. Why is it better in some senses? And one is because you know what your income is going to be every month. Based on the sales or the current subscription levels you have now, you know what your income will be next month. And you always know that. And the most important point, the second point, is that you actually have an inverse to this, where every month you have an not even accumulated, your revenue each month gets higher rather than lower. So this is a graph of my sales last year for one of my products called Tea Leaves. I only have one that's a subscription. The other one is a regular sales product. So I started as a subscription product at the beginning of last year. Makes for a very nice graph to start at the beginning of the year. And the blue sections are new subscriptions, and the green sections are renewals. And so if you look at this graph, you see a couple of things. You notice that the number of new subscriptions, or effectively the number of new sales I have, is all over the place over the year. If I were just selling a product, this would scare the crap out of me, because I never know how many I'm going to get within any 1 month. It's not a very good way to know exactly what your income is going to be. But overall, if you look at the trend, it's pretty steady, and it's also going up every month. So every month I'm making more money than I made the month before. Even if, like for instance, in June and July I made fewer newer subscriptions. There was one month, July, where it dipped, and I made less than the month before. But even still, it's not like I dropped down to zero or didn't get hardly any sales. So I still had all the renewal revenue coming in from that. So this makes for a very compelling model. But of course, that begs the question, and that's how can you make a product into a subscription product, and when is this doable? You can't just tell your customers, oh well, now I'm going to start charging you a subscription, just because it's better for me. They're not always going to agree with that, unless of course maybe you're Microsoft or Adobe. They did that, right? They may have added some features there, but overall the products are the same, but you still have to pay a subscription. So you can't really do this. This is not very viable for smaller independent developers. So what you need to do, you need to provide some new kind of service or option that the app makes available to the user, in addition to what the normal functionality is. For instance, in a notes application, you could provide a syncing capability so they can have their notes synced between two different platforms or apps or whatever. That's one option. And obviously, if you're creating a brand new online service, then right there you're of course going to do a subscription model, and that makes a lot of sense. So if you're doing the next Instagram for plumbers, then oops, I got ahead of myself there. I'm not going to go back because last time I went back it crashed. But anyways, so I skipped over some stuff. I think I'm just going to go on. I don't want the app to crash. So what I did, I'm going to talk a little bit about my product here, is that I took two approaches, two different ideas that allowed me to provide a subscription. And one was adding a syncing feature into my app. So Tea Leaves is a plugin that integrates with a small business CRM called Infusionsoft. And what it does is when the user selects a message, it'll go off to the CRM, get the information about the user they selected, pull it all back, and display it right in the email window, so that the person can see all the information about that user from the CRM. They can interact with it, make a decision based on it, and they can even add things into it and send it back to the CRM, uploading data to the CRM. So it really helps for business users in their workflow. Excuse me. And one of the things that a lot of these business users do with Infusionsoft is they like to send their email messages directly from mail and add them into Infusionsoft and save them there. So all the information about their interactions with that client are all stored inside this product called Infusionsoft, the CRM. So that's one of the features I added to the product. The only problem is that the Infusionsoft API had no way for me to determine if a message had already been added to their system. So if they came back into mail later on, or on another machine, I mean, on the same machine I could just store it in a database so I would know. But on another machine, if they come back and they're using mail, they can't and they see the same messages in an IMAP server, they can't determine if that message has already been sent up to Infusionsoft. So I added a syncing capability between computers that allows them to know that, so they don't send up the same message multiple times. So that was one of the way I added a feature that was very useful to the customers, that allowed me to say, okay, here's an extra service that I need to charge a subscription for in order to maintain it. And now, because Infusionsoft is a small product, it has a fairly small customer base. There's not a huge number of customers out there for me to sell my product to. So this is really the only way I can survive with this product. If I couldn't do a subscription, If I wasn't able to change this into a subscription last year, I would have just had to terminate the app and say I can't support this anymore. It's too much work, and there's not enough sales coming out of it, and so forth. So that allowed me to keep that product going. Excuse me. Which one's mine? So I'm going to sidetrack a little bit now. Hopefully this won't be too uninteresting for most of you what I'm going to talk about now, because most of you have to sell in the App Store, I assume, because if you're doing iOS stuff, you don't really have a choice. I'm not really sure about Android. You can still sideload on Android. You could sell a product and people could load it on. Yeah, you can. Okay, so this might be relevant to people on Android, and certainly it's relevant to people on Mac. And the idea is to sell outside the App Store. The advantages of an App Store are there's obviously a huge customer base, but the disadvantage is it's hard to find a product sometimes. And I know for something like certainly like my product, because it's kind of a niche. People don't really go there to look for this kind of app. They have a specific community they use online, and so they're not really interested in looking at the App Store. The App Store is not a very good advantage for a product like mine, a niche product. And I think niche products are a good kind of product to sell more, at a higher price, because people are looking for something specific, and it's also a good potential product for a subscription. Even if I could put my app in the App Store, I don't know if I wouldn't do it, but it certainly would not be the major way I would be trying to sell my product. And one of the reasons is, another reason is just the idea that I can control all of my marketing message a lot more clearer from my own site without having to worry about whether it's in sync with what's in the App Store and whether or not I can push out a new version. Everybody knows that, right? That's more relevant for iOS as well, but or the OS 10 store as well. But of course, the major reason for me, and this is super relevant when it comes to a subscription, is that the store, when I host my own store, I get 90 to 95% of the revenue and not 70%, and that makes a huge difference and accumulates quite a bit for a subscription. For example, over about a year subscription of Tea Leaves, of which it's €8 a month. So over a year of that, I keep about €88 per subscription per year. If I had to sell it on a store where somebody was taking 70%, I would only end up with €67 of that every year. And that's quite a large number when we accumulate it over all the subscribers and from year to year. So it makes a big difference. Like I said, I have to have my own store, but that gets easier all the time. FastSpring I use FastSpring, and it's very easy to set up. It's extremely flexible. It handles regular products, subscriptions, all kinds of stuff like that, and even allows for in-app purchase. I'm about to release a new version that allows the user to do the subscription inside the app, and even after that, manage the subscription from inside the app, which is going to be a good help for support and all that kind of stuff. So those are, I guess, some of the benefits of maybe being a subscriber and using the App Store. What about disadvantages? And this is more relevant for subscriptions. One of the disadvantages is that customers who are paying a subscription for a product are a little more vocal. And they come back and they say, I'm paying for this regularly, and I have a problem, and so forth. You have a customer who paid $5 for something, and next month it doesn't work. They're probably just going to go whatever, and I won't use it again. So there you have a very low support overhead. But if they're paying for it every month, they're always reminded when they see that line item that comes in on the bill, oh yeah, I'm using this, I'm paying for this thing, and I'm not been able to use it right, or it's been doing this weird thing, and so you do get a bit more demand for support issues, which is completely normal. Not complaining about that. It's just something you do have to deal with. And that's one of the reasons. I mean, you need to make sure you're making enough money to be able to pay for that support, whether you're doing it yourself or having somebody else do it. You got to pay. You pay them for that. But it's also something about business users that I find is that it's part of it is because they're not so computer savvy often, because they just want to get their job done. They're just using the computer to get something done. They also they're a little more vocal about those things. But if you take if you do that support and you take care of them well, even when you have complicated software that might be weird like mine, and it takes a little bit of extra work to get them to figure out how to resolve the problem and so forth, you can often turn that person into somebody who will promote your software and so forth. So that's always good. And that they'll do some word of mouth advertising for you, and that's very beneficial. The other issue that you obviously need is if you're going to have some kind of back-end or online side that you add as a feature to this to get a subscription going, you need a back-end to support it. So you have to develop a back-end. And there's lots of ways of doing that. Of course, you could use one of the prepackaged situations like either Windows, Azure, or Parse. They give you a pretty simple way to set it up and use the back-end service that's there and highly available for you and all that. Or you can create your own, use your favorite or most despised stack, whatever you like. They both have their trade-offs. One is going to be maybe a little bit easier and quicker to do, but is probably going to cost you more. And one's going to be maybe more take you more time and be a bit more complicated, and you have to maintain it and so forth. But maybe it won't cost you anything, or at least a very small amount, since you already probably have a web server, a server set up somewhere to host your site. So those are some downsides to be aware of in the subscription. Not too many. And as with Pavel, I went much faster than I thought. But so in summary, is having subscriptions allows you to maybe have a more sustainable business with just one or maybe two products, as opposed to maybe a bunch of products and so forth. And that allows you to maybe make some more money or make a good amount of money. Sustainable income is good. But also just having one or two products allows you to focus your ideas more and focus your time, and so that might give you a bit of motivation, which I'm always looking for when I'm working on my product. Is why is this interesting for me to work on, and what gets me up in the morning? And despite having more demanding customers, you generally get better customers because anybody who's going to pay for a product on a regular basis is probably not just your crappy customers who are always complaining and just want to give you 1 stars because they're like that. They're not. You don't get those kind of customers as much. And maybe it could give you a little bit of motivation to be outside of a store, which means maybe you can even earn more money. So that's all. I hope it was somewhat interesting. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. So the question was, how do you decide about different subscription plans, right? Mine was pretty straightforward. The only real differentiation I had was whether they could do a monthly subscription, annual subscription, and then based on the number of users, the price would change. And how I decided on that's a good question. So I started in dollars, so it was $10 a month for the subscription, and so what I did for the annual was just take 12 times that and gave them 1 free month, and then for the different levels of users, I just kind of adjusted based on the what kind of numbers looked nice. Surprisingly and happily, in my opinion, the monthly, the monthly one. I thought, huh? Exactly. Not only the most expensive, but I prefer having a small amount come in every month rather than getting $110 now that I have to remember in my head that I can't spend it all necessarily this month because it's supposed to go for the whole year, right? In the way I at least think about things. So I would say about 80% choose the monthly subscription, which I was pretty surprised about, yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, my question is, did you consider, did you have a need to like upgrade the subscription plan, subscription tariffs according to demand as far user is generating from your app
Uh,
service?
okay, the question is, did I have to change the pricing plans or upgrade them based on the number of users that I get? Is that right?
Basically, on a load that a specific user group are generating.
The load on my servers and so forth. I haven't had that experience yet. I don't think that would be a real serious issue. In fact, because I'm just a small business, if I get enough customers that I feel that the amount of money I'm making is like well beyond what I need, I might actually cut the cost for them to try and get more customers come in, because I think some people think that $10 a month even might be too much. So, but you know, I haven't also gotten to the point where it's made a difference on my server either. So that might be something that counteracts that. So it's hard to say. It's a good point though. Any other questions? No? All right, thank you.